The twin suns of Narka hung high in the sky, casting long shadows across the endless golden desert. The wind whispered across the sand, carrying heat and silence in the middle of the dry land. A tall stone stood alone, half buried in the dune. At the base of this stone, a girl named Ina sat quietly. Her hands were locked with thick old cuffs made of metal and bone. She did not cry. She had done that already, earlier in the morning. Now, she just waited. Her eyes looked far into the hot horizon. There was nothing to see but dust, heat, and more sand. She had never seen the sandworm, but she had heard many stories. Big, strong, older than the stars. Some said it could hear your heartbeat even from deep underground. And every season, it came when the time was right. The Lenthry people, her people, believed that one offering was enough to keep the worm away for the year. Ina had been chosen, not because she had done anything wrong, just because someone had to be the one. Her village had been quiet during the choosing. No one met her eyes, not even her uncle, who was the speaker of the sand. He had whispered to her in the morning, "You are brave, Ina. You bring peace." But she did not want to be brave, and she did not want to be peace. She just wanted to live. Now, she sat, her feet cold on the stone, her arms resting on her knees. The air smelled of dry dust and bitter wind. Small sandbugs ran across the stone. Unaware of what was about to come, Ina looked at the sky. The suns were past their highest point. It would come soon. Then, something strange happened. She saw a shape on the edge of the dunes. At first, she thought it was a mirage. The heat often made people see things, but the shape moved slowly, carefully, one foot after the other. It was tall and covered in cloth, with a scarf wrapped around its face and head. Dust rose behind it with every step. Ina blinked. No one ever came this way. The figure kept walking. She sat up straighter. Her hands moved a little, the chains making a soft clink. The figure stopped. Then, slowly, it began to walk toward her. Ina felt her heart beat faster. Was it someone from the village? No, it did not walk like a Lenthry. Too upright, too firm. And the cloth on its body was different, made of strong, strange material, like travelers wore in old stories. As the figure came closer, she saw a face behind the scarf. A kind face, but not Lenthari. It was human. Ina had only heard of humans in tales. Travelers from other stars, walkers of dead worlds, curious, brave, and sometimes strange. Her uncle once said they had eyes like soft fire and minds full of wild ideas. This one had sharp eyes, yes, but calm, not angry or loud. The human reached her, looked at the chains, then looked at her. He knelt beside her. His name, as she would later learn, was Reed. But now, he only said, "Are you all right?" His voice was quiet. The language was not hers, but the meaning came through. She blinked, surprised he spoke at all. "Are you here for the worm?" she asked, slowly, carefully. Reed looked into the distance. The ground rumbled. Ina froze. It was early, too early. The worm had never come before the suns lowered. But now, the sand began to move. Small waves rose on the surface, like something big was swimming beneath it. Reed stood up. He pulled something from the pack on his back. It looked like a small stick with strange lights. He pressed a button, and it unfolded into a rod. Ina had no idea what it was. The ground shook again. The stone cracked a little beside her. She held her breath. Then it came. Far in the distance, the sand rose like a wave. A long, thick shape burst from beneath the surface, twisting into the air and falling back. The worm, it was real. It moved, like a shadow with no end, sliding through the dunes, heading straight for the stone where Ina sat. Reed did not move. He held the rod out, his eyes watching the worm. Ina closed her eyes. She waited for the sound, for the teeth, for the end. But it didn't come. Instead, she heard a strange pulse like wind inside a tube. She opened her eyes. The worm had stopped. It stood halfway out of the sand, its large face tilted. It made no sound, no move forward. It only watched. Reed pressed something on the rod. A soft blue light circled the worm's face. He seemed to be measuring it, studying. Ina was amazed. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaking. Reed turned his head. "Just passing through," he said. He looked back at the worm. "But maybe I came just in time." The worm stayed still. Its long body rested across the sand, its head tilted toward the strange human. It didn't roar. It didn't dive. It only waited. Ina had never seen anything like it. The people of her village always said the worm came like thunder. It was supposed to rise, grab, and vanish back into the dunes. But now, the giant creature stood quiet, like a student listening to a teacher. Its many eyes blinked slowly. Its breath was heavy but calm. Reed did not seem afraid. He held the glowing rod in front of him and stepped carefully around the stone. He stopped beside Ina. The rod made small beeping sounds as if it was reading something in the air. Ina stared at him. "What are you doing?" she whispered. Reed didn't answer at first. He touched a button on the rod and nodded, like he understood something. Then he looked at her and said, "It's scanning." "Just checking." "Checking what?" He glanced at the worm. "Its pattern, its origin, its energy." Things like that. Ina did not understand most of those words, but his calm voice made her feel less afraid. He turned to her cuffs next. They were old, made of bone metal, locked tight for many seasons. Her people never meant to harm her. They only wanted to please the worm, but the chains still hurt. Reed took out a small tool that looked like a glowing needle. With a soft hum, he touched the lock. Click! The cuffs opened. Ina stared at her wrists. They were free. "I can stand?" she asked. Reed smiled a little. "Yes, come on." Slowly, she stood. Her legs were weak at first, but she managed. The worm still didn't move. It watched them both. Ina looked at the great beast. Why isn't it attacking?" Reed looked at the rod again. "It's confused," he said. "This one hasn't seen a human before." "You mean, it knows what you are?" He nodded. "It knows I'm not from here." Ina stepped beside him, still keeping a good distance from the creature. "Where are you from then?" Reed pointed upward. "A small planet, green, blue, full of noise. It's called Earth." Ina blinked. "That's just a story. My uncle said Earth was lost." Reed smiled. "We get that a lot." Suddenly, the worm growled a low sound like wind in a cave. It lowered its head to the sand, and slowly, it disappeared beneath the surface. The ground trembled again, but this time, it faded away. Reed stood quietly until the shaking stopped. Then he looked toward the horizon. "It's gone. For now." Ina turned to him. "You didn't fight it. You didn't run. How did you stop it?" Reed tapped the rod. "I've seen creatures like this before. Not just here. On other planets too." "You mean there are more?" "Yes," he said. "Long ago, a race called the Primordials built these things. They made them to protect old places, old cities, or sometimes to destroy them. Then they vanished, and their creatures stayed behind." Ina frowned. "So the worm, it isn't a god?" Reed shook his head. "No, it's a leftover." Ina sat down on the stone, still tired. "Then why do my people offer someone every season?" "Because they think it brings safety. The worm follows patterns. It appears when the air shifts, when the moons change. It doesn't care about offerings. It's just doing what it was made to do." Ina felt cold even under the sun. "So we've been wrong for generations?" Reed didn't answer that. Instead, he looked at the ground. "But it can be stopped if we find its core." "Core?" He nodded. "Each worm has one. It's deep inside. It controls its behavior, its path, everything." And his eyes widened. "You mean its heart?" "Something like that," Reed said. She thought for a moment. "Can it be removed?" Reed looked serious now. "It can, but only if we get close again, and that means drawing it out." Ina looked around. "How do we do that?" He smiled a little. "We need bait." She gave him a look. "You're not going to say me, are you?" Reed laughed softly. "Not again. No, this time. I'll be the bait." Ina stood. "Wait, you're going to call that thing back on purpose?" "Yes," he said. "But not yet. First, we need to find its old control chamber. If it's like the others, There should be one buried not far from here. Controlled chamber, she asked. Long ago, the primordials built places to guide these creatures. They left machines, signals, safety doors. If we find that place, we might find a way to shut the worm down. Ina looked out over the dunes. The desert stretched in every direction. Finding anything here would be like chasing a whisper. But Reed pulled out a small circular device. It floated in the air and began spinning slowly. I've got help, he said. This will lead us. Ina looked at him with new eyes. He was strange, calm, brave, and clearly not from Narca. But in her heart, a small flame lit. Hope. Reed started walking toward the west dunes. You coming? Ina looked back at the stone, the broken chains now lying in the sand. She took one last breath of dry air and nodded. I'm coming. The sun slowly moved across the sky as Reed and Ina walked across the wide desert. The wind blew softly, making lines in the sand. The floating round device above them blinked blue and spun like a quiet bird. It was leading the way. Ina had never been this far from the village. The ground felt different here. The sand was darker in some places. Some spots felt soft, like something had passed through recently. Reed walked with sure steps. His eyes looked everywhere at the sky, the ground, and the small shapes in the dunes. Ina followed, holding a cloth over her face. How much farther? She asked. Reed checked the screen on his rod. Not far. The signal is stronger now. What do you think we'll find? A chamber. Hidden. Old. If it's like the others, it will have power left. Others? Ina asked. Reed nodded. Other planets, other beasts, same builders, same silence. Ina had many questions, but before she could ask more, the floating device stopped. It blinked green. Reed raised his hand. We're here. Ina looked around. But there's nothing. Reed dropped to one knee. He touched the sand with his glove, then pressed a button on his rod. A low hum filled the air. Suddenly, the ground shook. Ina stepped back. Lines appeared in the sand, thin, glowing lines in the shape of a circle. The sand inside the circle began to fall down, like it was being pulled from below. Within moments, a dark stone door was uncovered. It had symbols carved into it, strange, round shapes with lines and curves. Reed touched the door. It opened slowly with a quiet hiss. Cool air came out. It smelled like metal and dust. They stepped inside. The room below was dark but not dead. Faint lights on the walls glowed as they walked through. The chamber was wide and round, with smooth floors and tall machines built into the walls. Everything was silent, like a sleeping mind. Ina looked around in wonder. What is this place? Reed smiled. A control point. This is where they guided the worm. He walked to one of the panels and touched the side. A screen lit up. Words in an unknown language appeared. He tapped through symbols like he had done it many times before. It's still working, he said. Ina watched him move through the screens. What are you looking for? A signal pattern, Reed said. Every worm follows one. It listens for calls. If we copy the pattern, we can call it here. She asked. Yes. Why? He looked at her. Because this is the only safe place. If we call it here, we can study it, stop it, or shut it down. Ina felt nervous. But won't it try to break in? Reed shook his head. These walls are made for it, built from something stronger than stone. It can't enter unless we let it. Ina stayed near the center of the room while Reed worked. Lights blinked. Machines hummed to life. Then Reed stopped. Got it. He turned and walked to the middle of the floor. A round plate was there. He placed his rod in the center and pressed a final button. The room sent out a low sound, soft and deep. It faded quickly, but Ina felt it in her chest. Reed checked the screen. It heard us. He said. Far above. The sand shifted again. The worm was awake. Back inside the chamber, a map glowed on the wall. It showed a small dot moving quickly across the desert. Ina looked at the screen. It's coming. Reed nodded. Faster than before. Why? It knows the signal. He said. It remembers this place. He moved to a second panel and touched the screen. Now we prepare. What do I do? Ina asked. Watch the energy lines. He said. pointing to glowing pots on the wall. If they blink red, tell me. That means the shield is weak. Ina nodded and stood beside the wall. The chamber started to hum louder. Blue lines on the floor lit up in circles. Reed stood near the center again, checking numbers and readings on his screen. Then the shaking began. Dust fell from the ceiling. Ina looked up. It's here. The dot on the map reached the edge of the chamber. A heavy sound echoed outside like the world groaning. The worm slammed into the sand above them. The whole chamber shook. Reed pressed a button. Shield on. A soft light covered the ceiling. Ina could see shadows through the roof, big and moving. The worm was circling above. It's searching, Reed said. For what? For a way in. Suddenly, a loud boom hit the shield. Red. Lights blinked on the wall. Ina? Reed shouted. Red, she said. Reed ran to another screen and tapped fast. The red lights turned yellow, then back to blue. Close one, he said. The worm roared, not in anger, but confusion. It hovered above the chamber, waiting, feeling. Then, the soft sound from the chamber changed. The worm stopped. Reed smiled. It worked. Ina looked confused. What worked? I sent it a second signal, one that tells it to pause. You can control it. No, he said. But I can ask it to wait. The worm slowly lowered itself to the sand. Its massive body coiled loosely around the outer dunes. Reed picked up the rod again. Now we tried to find its core. From here, no. Next time. Outside. And his eyes widened. We're going out there again. Yes, Reed said. But next time, we'll be ready. She looked at him, amazed. First, he had walked from the dust. Now, he had made the sandworm stop. Ina wasn't sure who this human really was. But she knew one thing. The worm had just met something it didn't understand, and that might change everything. The desert above was quiet again, but the sandworm was still out there resting in the dunes. Waiting. Inside the hidden chamber, Reed sat on the floor, working with small tools from his pack. Thin wires, glowing chips, and soft metal parts were spread around him. He moved with care, fixing a broken part of his rod. Ina sat nearby, watching him. You said you've seen creatures like this before. Reed nodded, not looking up. Yes, not just one. Not just here. Ina leaned closer. Where? Reed smiled slightly. There was one on a planet called Luma. It lived in the ice and looked like a white dragon. Another was deep in a cave world. That one glowed in the dark and made sounds like singing. Ina listened with wide eyes. Did they all attack people? Reed paused. They didn't want to. They were built a long time ago. Left behind. Confused. Lost. Just like this worm. Who built them? She asked. Reed put a round piece into the rod and tapped it gently. A race we call the primordials. No one knows what they looked like. No one knows why they vanished. But they left many things behind. Why would they make monsters? Reed looked at her now. Maybe to protect something. Maybe to test something. Or maybe just because they could. Ina stayed quiet for a moment. She thought of the worm, sleeping in the sand above. To her people, it was a god. But now it was just a machine. A huge, living, breathing machine. What happened to the one on Luma? She asked. Reed looked serious. It fell through a crack in the ice. I tried to help it, but it chose to disappear. Ina didn't know what to say. Reed stood and stretched. We can't wait long, he said. The worm is calm for now, but it won't stay that way forever. Ina stood too. So what do? We find its core, he said. Every creature the primordial is made has one. It's the center. If we reach it, we can learn everything. Maybe even stop it. Ina looked unsure. Where is it? Inside the worm, Reed answered. She blinked. You mean we have to get close again? He nodded. Very close. Later that day, the chamber doors opened. The sun outside was lower now. The sky was soft orange, and long shadows stretched across the dunes. Reed and Ina stepped onto the sand. The air was still. Far ahead, the worm lay curled like a sleeping hill. Its body stretched across the dunes like a long mountain. It wasn't hiding. It wasn't angry. It was waiting. And his heart beat fast. What if it wakes up suddenly? Reed held the rod. It knows we're here. It just doesn't see us as a threat. They walked slowly toward the great creature. As they got closer, Ina saw the size of it. She had never seen anything so big. Its skin looked like metal and stone. Thick plates lined its back. Its eyes were half closed. Glowing faintly, Reed knelt beside one of its side ridges and placed the rod on the skin. The device blinked, signal strong. He whispered. Ina looked at the creature. It doesn't even move, Reed nodded. It's calm, but alert. He touched the rod to a second point. A soft map appeared in the air, a glowing shape of the worm's body. A green light pulsed in the center. There, he said. The core. Ina pointed. It's deep inside. Yes, we can't remove it, but we can read it, if I connect. The reader here. He tapped a spot near its neck. I might get a memory scan. Ina watched as Reed carefully connected a wire to the worm's surface. The creature shifted slightly, but stayed quiet. The rod blinked, then the air filled with pictures, not real ones, floating shapes of light. Memories, scenes from long ago. Huge cities, tall towers, creatures with glowing skin. Voices in a language Ina couldn't understand. This is its memory? She asked. Yes, Reed said. It remembers the ones who made it. Ina saw tall shadows moving in the lights. They looked like they wore robes. Their hands were long. They stood near small worms, young ones. They raised it, Reed said softly, like family. Then the lights changed. Fires, broken towers, screams. The worm ran through the chaos. It looked lost, alone. Reed frowned. This is when they left. The images faded. Ina felt sad. It was just left here. Reed nodded. It waited for them. For a long time. Then it started following its last order: protect the desert, even if it meant scaring my people. Yes, the rod blinked red. Reed's eyes widened. It's waking. The worm's body shifted. Its eyes opened fully. It looked at Reed and Ina. Reed stood slowly. Back away. Ina stepped back carefully. Did we break it? No, Reed said. It just saw its own memory. That can be confusing. The worm raised its head slowly. Reed held up the rod, not as a weapon, but like a signal. It's okay, he said softly. The worm stared at him. Then it lowered its head again. Ina let out a deep breath. That was close. Reed smiled a little. We're building trust. She looked at him. You think it understands you? I think it understands peace, he said. Maybe it hasn't seen that in a long time. Ina looked at the huge creature again. It no longer looked like a monster to her. It looked like something old and tired. What now? She asked. Reed looked out toward the horizon. Now we teach it a new path. The next morning came quietly. The sky above Narca was pale blue, with thin clouds drifting like slow-moving ships. The sand was cooler now, and the winds felt gentle. Reed stood on a tall dune, staring into the horizon with his rod in hand. Below him, the great sandworm lay still across the dunes, like a sleeping mountain. Its eyes were closed, but its long body shifted once in a while, like it was dreaming. Ina climbed up beside him, her arms full of dried food and water packs. You didn't sleep, she said. Reed smiled. I rested, but I had thinking to do. Ina handed him a water pouch. About the worm. Yes, he said, drinking slowly. It remembers more than I expected. Not just images, feelings too. Ina sat down beside him. Feelings? He nodded. It remembers safety. A place it once called home. She looked out at the desert. But that place is gone. I know. Reed said, that's why I want to give it something new. A new pattern to follow. Ina raised an eyebrow. You mean reprogram it? Not exactly. It's not a machine you control. It's more like a being you guide. She thought for a moment. How will you guide it? I'll show it what peace looks like. What life looks like without fear. Ina tilted her head. How? Reed pointed to a spot in the distance. There's something beneath that dune. I found signs of it on my map last night. I think it's the desert Hartan old station the Primordials built. A memory hub. Another hidden place? Ina asked. Yes, if we reach it. I can send a new pattern from there. A strong one. It might reach the worm's core and change how it behaves. Ina stood. Then let's go. They walked for over an hour. The floating scanner led the way, spinning softly in the air. The sand grew thinner and small. Broken stones appeared underfoot. The land here was older. The wind carried the scent of metal and heat. Finally, the scanner beeped and glowed green. Reed stopped. We're here. Ina looked around. I don't see anything. Reed knelt and brushed sand away from a round, flat surface. Symbols appeared old and faded, but still glowing faintly. Stand back, he said. He placed his hand on the surface. The plate hummed, then split open slowly, revealing a spiral stair that led underground. They stepped inside. The dessert heart was cooler than the other chamber. The walls were smoother, and soft lights moved like water across the ceiling. Everything felt calm. This place feels alive, Ina whispered. It is, Reed replied. Some of these old places still hold power. Memory power. They reached a round room at the center. In the middle stood a tall crystal column, surrounded by light. Reed walked to the controls and connected his rod. What will it do? Ina asked. If it works, it will send a new path to the worm. One that says, you are free. You are not alone. You don't need to protect with fear. Ina watched as Reed typed a pattern into the system. Soft sounds echoed through the walls, like songs with no words. Then the crystal pulsed. A wave of soft green light spread across the floor and up through the ceiling. It's done, Reed said. The signal is out. Ina looked at him. Now what? Reed sat down on a low bench. Now, we wait. Above the ground, the sandworm stirred. Its long body shifted slightly. Its eyes opened. It didn't feel pain. It didn't feel danger. It felt something new. A soft pulse, like a voice not speaking but inviting. A path that led not to defense, but to rest. It blinked once, then slowly raised its head. Back in the dessert heart, Reed and Ina sat in silence. A soft humming filled the room. Now, steady and gentle. Ina broke the silence. Do you think it will work? Reed looked at the ceiling. I hope so. But if not, we try again. Ina smiled. You never give up, do you? Reed shook his head. I've seen too many broken things. Some can be fixed, some can't, but I never stop trying. She looked at the glowing crystal. Will the signal stay on? Yes, it will repeat every day. Like a quiet reminder. Over time, the worm might start following the new path, even if it takes months. Reed nodded. Even if it takes years. Ina stood and stretched. Then I guess we'll need to teach the others too. Reed looked up. The villagers, yes, they still fear. The worm, they think it wants blood. We'll have to show them it doesn't. Reed smiled. That might be harder than reprogramming a sand monster. Ina laughed softly. We'll manage. They walked back toward the main chamber. The sun was lower now, and the sky had turned golden. As they climbed out of the dessert heart, they saw something strange. The worm had moved. It was now lying near the old stone where Ina had once been chained, but not in anger. It looked peaceful, almost guarding the place. Ina stared. Is it waiting? Reed stepped forward and placed his rod on the ground. No, it's watching. For what? For us, he said. Ina looked at the creature. Do you think it understands what you gave it? Maybe not fully, but it feels something different now. They stood there for a while in the quiet. Evening light. Ina reached down and picked up one of the broken chains from the sand. Then she dropped it gently, letting it sink into the dune. I think it's time to stop calling it a monster, she said. Reed nodded. Then what will you call it? Ina smiled. Friend. The stars began to show in the sky as night fell across the desert of Narca. The cool wind moved gently through the dunes, and the golden sand turned silver under the moonlight. Reed sat beside a small fire, checking the settings on his rod. He had made a few changes since connecting to the dessert heart. The device now glowed with a softer light, and it gave off a soft hum. Ina returned with a bundle of dry roots. These burn slower. She said, the old people in my village use them on cold nights. Reed nodded. Smart idea. We'll need warmth. The nights here bite hard. She sat across from him, watching the flames dance. Her eyes looked past the fire to where the sandworm lay curled near a large dune, not far away. Its glowing eyes were closed, its breathing calm. It hasn't moved in hours, she said. It's listening, Reed replied. The signal is still reaching its core. It's thinking. Ina frowned. It feels strange. Like we're camping next to a giant beast that could swallow us in 1 second. And yet, I'm not scared anymore. Good, Reed said. That means trust is growing. They both looked at the worm for a moment. Its body sparkled slightly under the stars, like dust on glass. Ina broke the silence. What happens tomorrow? Reed glanced at her. We test the next part. She raised an eyebrow. There's more. He nodded. One last scan. I want to confirm if the core is changing, if it's accepting the new path fully. And if it doesn't, Reed looked thoughtful. Then we'll need to help it the hard way. Ina leaned forward. What does that mean? It means we find a way to shut down the old command code from the outside. But that can be dangerous. Why? Because we'll have to get even closer to the worm's main sensors. That's where it can react fast if it feels threatened. Ina looked worried. But it knows you now. Yes, Reed said softly. But sometimes, even friends can be afraid. At sunrise, the desert glowed orange and gold again. Reed and Ina stood at the edge of the dune where the sandworm rested. The air was still. Not a sound moved across the land. Reed held a new tool. It was small and sharp, with a green light at the tip. This is the last step, he said. I'll place this near the core signal point. It will read the change. Ina looked at the large, curved shape of the worm's head. Where exactly is that? Reed pointed. Near the upper side of the ridge plates. I've seen the spot before. But I need to be fast and gentle. Ina looked nervous. You'll be that close. He nodded. Yes, and I need you to watch the signal screen. If it turns red, shout. She held the screen carefully and nodded. Be careful. Reed smiled. I always try. Then, he walked toward the worm. The sandworm didn't move. Reed stepped slowly, never rushing, his boots pressing softly into the sand. When he reached the large plate near the creature's head, he stopped and touched the surface gently. The worm blinked once. Reed whispered, It's me. Just me. He placed the green lit tool on a groove between two thick scales. It clicked softly and began scanning. Back on the dune, Ina watched the screen. It blinked blue, then green, then red. Incoming pulse. Ina shouted. Reed's eyes widened. It's confused. The worm's body shifted. Its eyes opened wide. It raised its head slightly. A deep sound vibrated from its chest, not a roar, but a warning. Reed stayed still. Easy. The worm's sensors flashed again. Pina. Reed shouted. Press the side button now. Ina didn't hesitate. She pressed the button on the scanner. A soft blue wave shot from the device, reaching the worm's head. The worm stopped moving. Its eyes slowly dimmed. The signal turned green again. Reed let out a deep breath. Good job. He gently removed the tool and backed away. When he returned to the dune, Ina was waiting. That was close, she said. Reed nodded. Too close. But we did it. He smiled. Yes, the scan says the core is accepting the new code. Not all of it yet, but it's learning. Ina looked proud. Then the worm is changing. Yes, Reed said, but now we have to guide it fully. One last thing. What is it? We need to lead it back to your village. Ina stared. What? Why? Reed turned serious. Because your people still fear it. The worm needs to show that it brings no harm anymore. If it walks near the village without causing fear, a new story begins. Ina bit her lip. They might run, or try to fight. Reed shook his head. That's why you'll go first. You'll speak to them, and I'll stay with the worm. Pina was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll do it. Reed placed a hand on her shoulder. You're stronger than you know. That evening, as the suns began to fall, the sandworm rose from its rest. Its body moved slowly, carefully, like a giant wave of stone. It turned toward the west, toward Ina's village. Ina stood beside it, her heart beating fast. She looked up at Reed. Ready? Reed smiled. Let's change history. Then they began to walk together, human, alien, and creature award a village that still believed in sacrifice, not knowing that peace was now walking toward them. The desert sun was softer now. It hung low in the sky, turning the land golden once more. Shadows stretched long across the dunes. In the air carried the smell of dry earth and distant winds. Ina stood at the front, her eyes on the far edge of the desert where the roofs of her village began to appear. Behind her, the great sandworm moved with care, its body shifting like a mountain wrapped in glass. And beside her walked Reed, quiet and alert, holding the control rod. "We're close," Ina said softly. Reed nodded. "How do you feel?" She didn't answer at first. Then she said, "Not scared, just full." "Full of what?" "Memories, hope, worry, but mostly hope." Reed smiled. "That's a good mix." They walked a bit more. The sand turned flatter, the land smoother. The path ahead was once the same road her people had used to lead prisoners toward the dunes. Now she was walking the opposite way with a worm that no longer wanted harm. As they got nearer, they could see the village guards on the watch posts. At first, nothing happened. Then, one of the guards noticed the large shape behind Ina. A horn was blown. Others ran to the walls. People started shouting. Ina raised both hands. "Wait," Reed said quickly. "This is the moment. Speak strong." Ina stepped ahead. "My name is Ina," she called. "I am alive." There was silence. Then, a voice from the tower shouted, "How? You were taken." "I was. But I was saved not by force, not by magic. A human walked out of the dust and gave me a chance to live." Gasps and murmurs followed. "Look behind me," she continued. "Do you see the creature we all feared? It walks beside me now. It has changed. Because someone chose to believe it could change." From the wall, the village elder Morrow stepped forward. His voice was cautious. "Ina, how can we believe?" This Reed stepped up. He raised the rod. "Because I helped it," he said. "My name is Reed. I come from a far place, another world. I did not come to fight, only to understand." Morrow looked unsure. "The worm eats, it destroys. That is what we have always known. Stories can change," Reed said. "They must, or else we stay afraid forever." The worm let out a low sound, not a growl, but a deep, calm breath. Its eyes glowed softly, not with threat, but awareness. Then something unexpected happened. A small child from the village, no more than 6, ran out of the gate and toward Ina. Ina's heart jumped. "Loma." The girl ran straight to her, arms wide. Ina caught her and held her close. "I miss you," Loma cried. "I miss you too," Ina whispered. Behind them, the worm stayed still, watching with calm eyes. It did not move. It waited. From the wall, people began to talk. Some stepped forward, some held back, but none ran and none attacked. Morrow finally spoke again. "Bring them in." That night, a fire was lit in the center of the village. The people sat in a circle, curious and quiet. The sandworm remained just outside the gate, lying peacefully. Its large eyes blinked slowly. It seemed more like a hill than a beast. Ina stood in the circle. Reed stood beside her. She told them everything. How she was chained, how she was left in the desert, how Reed found her, helped her, and then most importantly how he spoke to the worm, not with weapons, but with patience and learning. The people listened. Then Reed spoke. "Your ancestors feared the worm because they did not understand it, so they made rules. They built stories, but those stories do not have to trap you forever. But it ate people." One villager said. "It reacted," Reed replied. "It was controlled. The desert code told it to do so. But now, that code is breaking. It remembers more." Morrow looked thoughtful. "And what does it remember now?" "Stillness," Reed said. "Balance. It wants peace." The people were quiet. Then a young woman stood up. "If it truly wants peace, then what do we give it?" Reed turned to Ina. Ina smiled. "Respect, room, maybe even friendship. Not chains, not fear." Morrow finally nodded. "Then we will watch. We will learn again." Over the next few days, something new began. In the village, children came near the dunes, watching the worm from safe spots. It did not chase. It did not roar. It simply lay in the sand and listened. Reed showed the elders how the rod worked. He let them hold it. Some even spoke to the worm through it, learning its thoughts and emotions in simple lights and tones. Ina walked freely again. No one avoided her. In fact, many came to ask her questions. She became a symbol of a new time in the worm. It remained, not as a monster, not as a god, but as a living part of the land like the wind, or the stars, or the rising dunes. One morning, Reed stood at the edge of the village, a small bag on his back. Ina met him there. "You're leaving," she said. Reed nodded. "Time to go. Other places, other questions. You won't need me now." Ina looked down. "I'll miss you." He smiled. "You won't be alone. You have your people and the worm." She laughed softly. "I still can't believe we sleep with it nearby now." Reed looked out at the desert. "The story has changed." Ina looked at him. "Will I see you again?" Reed winked. "Deserts have a way of calling people back." She smiled. "Safe travels." He turned, walked a few steps, then looked back. "Oh," he said. "Bad day to be a worm, huh?" Ina laughed. Then Reed disappeared into the golden light. Just like he came, one figure walking out into the dust, quiet but unforgettable. And behind him, a new story began to grow.